The following is an original production of AZPM News.
Arizona Science is supported by Research Corporation for Science Advancement.
For Arizona Public Media, I'm Leslie Tolbert, Regent's Professor Emerita in Neuroscience at the University of Arizona, and this is Arizona Science. Today our guest is Kathy Jacobs. Kathy's a professor in the Department of Environmental Science, and she directs UA's Center for Climate Adaptation Science and Solutions, which resides in the Arizona Institute for Resilience. Kathy, thanks very much for joining us.
I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So what drew you in the first place to your focus on the important and actually urgent climate challenges that we face today?
Well, I've always been drawn to the environment and to nature in general. And when I came to the University of Arizona, it was after a 23-year-long career at the Arizona Department of Water Resources. So I didn't go directly into climate. I went first into water management and then moved into sort of the intersection between climate and water management.
Tell us about your Center for Climate Adaptation Science and Solutions. What exactly is its focus?
Well, we actually have a pretty broad focus. We're trying to help bring together the community of people at the University of Arizona who have adaptation capacity. There are around 60 faculty members who have climate adaptation as a piece of what it is that they do. That's a huge amount of capacity. And the idea of our center is to make that capacity more useful and more applied, working with people off campus, and also just building community around the whole topic of adaptation.
So you've made the point that there are lots of different drivers that are causing damage to our environment. It's people's behavior, it's climate change, that all need to be addressed, and each, of course, influences the other. Give us some specific examples of problems and how you're addressing them in multidisciplinary ways.
Sure, I'll give you a couple examples. The first one is one that we've just completed, which is something called the Lower Santa Cruz River Basin Study. And the University of Arizona played a major role in this study, which was led by the Bureau of Reclamation. The idea was to bring lots of water-related players in the region together with the scientists and work on the issue of where are there going to be supply and demand imbalances in our basin in the future. So there's a big science component to that, but there's also a component having to do with land use and development and conservation and so forth. And as a result, we had a large number of partners who stayed with us over a 6-year period and really felt like they were playing a role in defining their future and answering these questions. So that's one example. There's a second example, which is what I'm working on right now, is a very large project funded by the Board of Regents, and it's called the Tri-University Water Supply Enhancement and Recharge Project. And that project is looking across the entire state at ways that we can capture water that is currently lost to evaporation and get that underground as recharge for use as a water supply. And it turns out to be a very intense modeling effort, but also really important to understand who are all the stakeholders, how will they use this information, how will we communicate it to them.
And I can imagine that sometimes the people you're talking to feel that what you're doing is kind of esoteric. How do you remind people of the importance day to day of what they're being asked to do? Or is it conversely that they're driving it because they desperately want you to give them suggestions for things they can do?
I do feel that particularly on the issues of water and climate change, there is a lot of emotional commitment to the idea of trying to find solutions. I don't feel that I'm ever in a situation where I'm sort of forcing my knowledge on some unsuspecting person. Rather, we have meetings where we talk about what are the issues that really need to be addressed and how can we put boundaries around those issues and agree on how we're going to proceed and then work together. We're working with stakeholders and decision makers and trying to have them help us see the path. So we're working on it together.
What are the hurdles that you face sort of day to day? There must be times when you're sort of coming up against any given community's custom in a way that they don't welcome.
Sure. I mean, all of the issues having to do with water and climate have both an emotional and a political component. And obviously, when you're working with First Nations and with tribal entities, they have their own view of their relationship with the earth and their relationship with water and rivers. And I think if you start from a completely respectful perspective on that, obviously it helps tremendously. But it turns out everyone has an emotional and a political connection to either a solution or to the problem. The politics of climate change and the politics of water are really substantial and not to be overlooked. It's just a question of trying to frame a solution together with people and have them be part of the process so that they'll believe in the process.
I'd also like to hear about your time working in the Obama administration as a White House water policy and adaptation advisor and as director of the National Climate Assessment. That must have been really exciting and in many ways invigorating, but also frustrating. Tell us about that.
Well, you're absolutely right about both invigorating and frustrating. It was the opportunity of a lifetime in the sense that my portfolio included water policy and climate adaptation, as well as running the National Climate Assessment. And honestly, I had no idea that I would have a portfolio like that when I agreed to go there. But I had worked on the National Climate Assessment previously. I was the lead for the water chapter in the first National Climate Assessment. And so I knew what I was getting into, but it was a major lift. And the reason is all the capacity to do these assessments had been lost during the Bush administration. And so there was no staff there. There was no capacity to actually pull everything together. And I had to create that entire process and try to set it up in such a way that it was institutionalized and not something that was here today and gone tomorrow.
And are some of your recommendations continuing to be addressed?
Yes and no. One of the biggest recommendations was that we create a process that was ongoing and strategic and focused on learning from what we have done in an adaptation mode and in a mitigation mode, and try to feed that back into the system so people stop making the same mistakes over and over again. Our attempts to build what we called a sustained assessment process have been thwarted to some significant degree. And of course, now they've actually shut down the entire office that we created and stopped the process of developing the National Climate Assessment. And so beyond that, they've even taken off of their website all of the assessments that have been done by the volunteers who worked on it over the last 25 years. And so that is a massive step backwards from what I was trying to achieve there.
So you must be trying to address some of these issues in your ongoing appointments to National Academy and other nationwide groups. Do you remain hopeful that climate issues can continue to garner attention and the funding that they require?
Well, there's no doubt that climate will continue to attract attention because it's not going away, it's intensifying. I think the question is, how are we going to respond? I have every confidence that we have the capacity to manage climate change, but the sooner we do it, the more likely we are to limit the impacts. So it's really a trade-off. If we don't manage emissions very quickly, the amount of adaptation that we have to do and the amount of risk that we are putting people under increases every year.
Well, thanks very much for talking with us, Kathy. Your work to address climate change is so very important. Kathy Jacobs directs UA's Center for Climate Adaptation Science and Solutions and is a national leader in developing overarching solutions to the big environmental challenges of our day. You can listen to this and all Arizona Science Conversations at azpm.org/Arizona Science. I'm Leslie Tolbert.
Thank you to Research Corporation for Science Advancement for their support of Arizona Science.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.